I am 28 years old, a woman who until my wedding day believed in the simple, quiet foundations of love. I believed in honesty. I believed in the man I was marrying, Liam. We stood in a room filled with flowers and soft light, surrounded by people who were supposed to wish us well. The clinking of glasses settled, and Isabelle, Liam's cousin, stood up. She held her champagne flute high, a sly, knowing smile on her face that I had grown to dislike over the years. It was a smile that always seemed to carry a secret, one that was always at someone else's expense. Usually mine. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her voice cutting through the gentle hum of conversation. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her. She had a flair for the dramatic, a need to be the center of attention that I found exhausting. Liam squeezed my hand under the table, a small gesture of reassurance that I had come to rely on whenever Isabelle was near. He always told me to ignore her, that she was harmless, just a little bitter about her own life. She looked directly at me, her eyes glittering with something that was not kindness. "To the lucky bride," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "To Clara, the woman who finally gets to have the man I loved first." A few people gasped. Most just shifted uncomfortably, unsure if this was a joke or a confession. A smattering of awkward, polite laughter broke the tension, the kind of noise people make when they are desperate for something not to be true. I tried to smile, to play along with what I hoped was just another one of her terribly misguided attempts at humor. I was a bride. This was my day. I would not let her ruin it. But then I looked at Liam. The polite, slightly annoyed smile he usually wore for Isabelle's antics was gone. His face was completely drained of color. He was not just embarrassed. He was not just angry. He looked terrified. His knuckles were white where he gripped my hand. He stared at Isabelle, his mouth slightly open, his breathing shallow. It was a look of pure, unadulterated panic. And in that moment, I knew. This was not a joke. This was not Isabelle being dramatic. This was something real, something dark, and it was a secret my new husband had been keeping from me. The happy bubble of my wedding day popped, leaving behind a cold, silent dread that settled deep in my stomach. Isabelle's words were a shot fired in a war I never even knew I was fighting. And from the look on Liam's face, he had just realized we were both about to become casualties. The rest of the reception was a blur. I went through the motions, cutting the cake, having our first dance, smiling for photographs that I knew would forever be tainted by that single awful moment. Liam was a ghost beside me. He held me. He smiled. But his eyes were distant, constantly darting towards Isabelle, who now sat smugly at her table, basking in the unease she had created. He was a puppet going through the motions, his strings being pulled by a past I knew nothing about. Every time I tried to catch his eye, to ask him without words what was happening, he would look away, his jaw tight with a tension that felt like a wall between us. When we finally escaped to the hotel suite, the silence was deafening. The grand room, with its champagne on ice and rose petals scattered on the bed, felt like a mockery. This was supposed to be the start of our forever, but it felt like an ending. I took off my veil and placed it on the dresser, my hands trembling slightly. I turned to face him. He was standing by the window, staring out at the city lights, his back to me. "Liam, what was that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I was afraid to speak any louder, as if a normal tone would shatter the fragile peace. He did not turn around. "It was nothing," he said, his voice flat and unconvincing. "It was Isabelle being Isabelle. You know how she is. She loves to stir up trouble." "No," I said, walking closer to him. "This was different. I saw your face. Liam, you were terrified. What is she talking about? What secret?" He finally turned to face me, and his expression was a carefully constructed mask of nonchalance. But I knew him too well. I could see the panic still flickering in his eyes. "There is no secret," he insisted, his voice a little too firm. "She had a crush on me when we were kids. That is it. She is just trying to get under your skin because she is jealous. Please, Clara, can we not let her ruin our wedding night? Let's just forget about it. He tried to pull me into a hug, to end the conversation with a gesture of affection. But I resisted. It felt wrong. It felt like he was trying to placate me, to manage me, not to be honest with me. I can't forget about it, I said, my voice gaining strength. Not when you look at me like I am a stranger. You are hiding something from me, Liam. On our wedding night, you are starting our marriage with a lie. I am not lying, he said, his voice rising in frustration. I am telling you it is nothing. A stupid, childish crush from 15 years ago. Why are you blowing this up into some big conspiracy? Because of your reaction, I shot back. You did not look like a man remembering a silly childhood crush. You looked like a man who just had his darkest secret threatened to be exposed in front of everyone he knows. He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw working. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the battle between telling me the truth and maintaining whatever lie he had been living. He chose the lie. You are being overly dramatic, he said coldly. I was just shocked that she would be so tasteless. That is all. Now, I am tired. I am going to take a shower. He turned and walked into the bathroom, closing the door firmly behind him. The sound of the lock clicking into place felt like a door slamming shut on our new life together. I stood alone in the middle of our wedding suite, the beautiful white dress suddenly feeling like a costume. I had married a man I thought I knew, but the person who had stood by the window just now was a stranger. A stranger with a secret so deep he would lie to his new wife on their wedding night to protect it. And Isabelle, his cousin, was the one holding the key. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the rose petals crunching beneath me, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. The fight was not over. It had just begun. The sound of the shower running was a low, steady hum, a stark contrast to the frantic thoughts racing through my mind. I sat there, replaying the toast, replaying the look on Liam's face, replaying our hollow conversation. Every instinct in my body was screaming that he was lying. We had been together for 3 years. We had built our relationship on a foundation of communication and trust. We promised each other no secrets. Yet here we were, not even 12 hours into our marriage, and a secret was already tearing us apart. I felt a surge of anger. Anger at Isabelle for her cruelty, for her deliberate act of sabotage. But more than that, I felt a deep, gut-wrenching anger at Liam. He was my husband. He was supposed to be my partner, my safe place. Instead, he was treating me like an obstacle, someone to be managed and deceived. He was choosing to protect a secret over protecting me, over protecting us. The water in the bathroom shut off. I braced myself for his return, for the strained silence that would inevitably follow. I needed a plan. I could not let this go. If I did, this secret would fester between us forever, a poison seeping into the roots of our marriage. I had to know the truth. For my own sanity, for the future I thought we were building together. Liam's phone, which he had left on the bedside table, buzzed. I glanced at it without thinking, my eyes drawn to the screen as it lit up. A new message had appeared on the lock screen. It was from Isabelle. My heart started to pound in my chest, a heavy, frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew I should not look. It was an invasion of his privacy. But he had already invaded our marriage with his lies. My hand moved on its own accord, my fingers hovering over the phone. The message was a preview, just the first few lines visible. But it was enough. Did I go too far? The text read. You looked like you saw a ghost. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. For now. The words hit me like a physical blow. For now. It was not just a message. It was a threat. It was blackmail. This was not about a childhood crush. This was not Isabelle being dramatic. This was leverage. She had something on him. Something so powerful that the mere hint of its exposure could make him turn pale with fear. And he had lied directly to my face about it. The bathroom door opened and Liam walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist. He looked at me, his expression wary. He saw the phone in my hand, saw the look on my face, and his own face hardened. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. I held up the phone, the screen still glowing with her message. "Your secret is safe with me. For now," I read aloud, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. "What secret, Liam? What secret is so important that your cousin is blackmailing you with it on our wedding night?" He stared at the phone, then at me, and for a second, I saw the mask slip. I saw the raw panic from the reception flash in his eyes again before he quickly stamped it out. He snatched the phone from my hand. "This is between me and Isabelle," he said, his voice cold and clipped. "It has nothing to do with you." "Nothing to do with me?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "It has everything to do with me. I am your wife. Whatever this is, it is affecting you. It is affecting us. You are lying to me, Liam. You are letting her threaten you, and you are shutting me out. We are supposed to be a team." "We are a team," he said, turning away from me to get dressed, a clear dismissal. "And as part of that team, I am asking you to trust me and drop this. It is old family business. It is messy, and it is not your burden to carry." "It became my burden the moment she made that toast," I said, my voice trembling. "It became my burden the moment you chose to lie to me instead of confiding in me. I cannot build a life with a man who has a past so dark he cannot even speak of it. I need to know what you are hiding." He pulled on a shirt, his movements sharp and angry. "You do not need to know anything," he said, his back still to me. "You need to let it go. For your own good. For our good." "So that is it?" I asked, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. "That is your answer? Just trust you while you keep secrets and get blackmailed by your cousin? That is not a marriage, Liam. That is a prison." He finally turned to face me, fully dressed now, looking like a stranger in our honeymoon suite. His face was a cold, impenetrable mask. "I am sorry you feel that way," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "But that is how it has to be. Now I am going to get some air." He walked past me, grabbed his wallet and room key from the dresser, and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone with the silent, mocking luxury of the room and the glowing screen of his phone, which now felt like a ticking bomb. The words, "for now," echoed in my mind. Isabelle had set a timer, and I had no idea what would happen when it reached 0. But I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to sit around and wait for the explosion. I was going to find the truth myself. The next morning, I woke up alone. Liam had come back at some point in the night and slept on the sofa. The space next to me in the bed was cold and empty, a perfect metaphor for how I felt. The joy and hope of the previous day had completely evaporated, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. I got up and found him in the small kitchenette area, pouring a cup of coffee, his back to me. The silence was thick with unspoken words, with resentment and fear. I decided to try a different approach. The anger had not worked. Maybe a plea for connection would. "Liam, we cannot start our lives like this," I said softly. "Please just talk to me. Whatever it is, we can face it together. That is what we promised." He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering, still not looking at me. "There is nothing to face," he said, his voice weary. "I told you. It is old family stuff. It is complicated." "Everything is complicated," I replied, my frustration rising again. "Life is complicated, but we are supposed to navigate it together. You are shutting me out. You are treating me like I am the enemy here, not Isabelle." He finally turned, leaning back against the counter. He looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes. "You do not understand," he said. "My family. They are not like yours. They have their own way of doing things. Some doors are better left closed. And you are okay with that? I asked. You are okay with your cousin holding some mysterious power over you? You are okay with starting our marriage on a bed of lies? It is not a bed of lies, he snapped, his patience finally breaking. It is one thing. One thing from a long time ago that has no bearing on us, on our future. Isabelle is just being cruel. She likes to poke at old wounds. The best way to handle her is to ignore her. If we do not give her a reaction, she will get bored and move on to someone else. I knew he was wrong. Isabelle was not the type to get bored. She was like a dog with a bone, and this secret was her favorite one to chew on. But arguing with Liam was like talking to a brick wall. He had his defenses up, and I could not get through. I needed a new strategy. I needed information, and I was not going to get it from him. Okay, I said, forcing a note of resignation into my voice. Okay, Liam. If you say it is nothing, then I will try to believe you. I will try to let it go. It was a lie. Of course, but it was a necessary one. I needed him to lower his guard. He seemed to sag with relief. Thank you, he said, his voice softening. That is all I ask. Let's just try to enjoy the start of our honeymoon. Let's not let her win. He came over and kissed my forehead. It was a hollow, meaningless gesture. He was not asking for a truce. He was asking for my surrender, and I had no intention of surrendering. Later that day, I made a call. My maid of honor, Sarah, was the most practical, level-headed person I knew. She was also fiercely loyal. I told her everything. The toast, Liam's reaction, the text message, our fight. I needed someone on my side. Someone to confirm that I was not crazy. That I was not, as Liam had suggested, being overly dramatic. Oh, honey, she said after I had finished, her voice full of sympathy. That is awful. What a horrible way to start a marriage. I do not know what to do, Sarah, I confessed, my voice breaking. He will not talk to me. He is completely shut down. He just keeps saying it is nothing, but I know it is something big. Of course it is, she said firmly. Men do not go sheet white over a childhood crush. And that text message? That is straight-up blackmail. She is threatening him. You have every right to be upset. You have every right to know what is going on. But how do I find out? I asked, feeling helpless. He will not tell me, and I cannot exactly ask Isabelle. No, you cannot, she agreed. But you can talk to other people. What about his mom? Carol. She always seemed nice enough in a slightly overbearing way. I thought about it. Carol, Liam's mother, was also Isabelle's aunt. She had always doted on both of them, but she had a tendency to smooth things over, to pretend that problems did not exist for the sake of keeping up appearances. She was the matriarch of a family that specialized in sweeping things under the rug. I do not know, I said doubtfully. She will probably just defend Isabelle and tell me I am imagining things. Probably, Sarah said. But her reaction will tell you something. If she gets super defensive, then you know you are on the right track. You know there is something she is helping to hide. It is a start. You have to start somewhere, Clara. You cannot just let this go. It will eat you alive. She was right. I had to do something. I could not live in this state of uncertainty, constantly wondering what secret my husband was hiding. What power his cousin held over him. I thanked Sarah and hung up, a new sense of resolve solidifying within me. Liam wanted me to leave the past alone, but the past was not staying in its place. It had walked right into my wedding and announced its intention to stay, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. My chance to speak with Carol came a few days later. We had returned from our truncated, tense honeymoon, and the pretense of newlywed bliss was already wearing thin. Liam was either overly solicitous, his cheerfulness painfully fake, or quiet and withdrawn. We were orbiting each other, not connecting. Carol called to invite us over for a family dinner, a post-wedding celebration, as she put it. I knew Isabelle would be there. Part of me wanted to refuse, to avoid the inevitable awkwardness. But another part of me, the part that was now on a mission, knew this was the perfect opportunity. I found Carol in the kitchen, fussing over a pot roast. She greeted me with a warm hug, but her eyes were searching, as if she was looking for cracks in my happy bride facade. "It is so good to see you, dear," she said, patting my arm. "Did you two have a wonderful time?" "It was relaxing," I said, a non-committal answer. I decided to get straight to the point to catch her off guard. "Carol, I wanted to ask you about something. Isabelle's toast at the wedding. It was a little strange, was not it?" Carol's smile tightened instantly. Her hand, which had been stirring the gravy, stilled. "Oh, that," she said with a dismissive wave of her other hand. "That is just Isabelle. You know how she is. Always has to be the center of attention. A bit of a wicked sense of humor. You must not take her seriously." It did not feel like a joke, I pressed, keeping my voice calm and even. And Liam, he seemed very upset by it. More than just annoyed. He seemed genuinely distressed. She turned her back to me, busying herself at the stove again. "Well, of course he was upset," she said, her voice a little too bright. "It was embarrassing. She should not have done it. I will have a word with her. But honestly, Clara, the best thing to do is just to rise above it. She has always been possessive of Liam. They grew up together. They were as close as siblings. She probably just feels a little left out now that he is married." Her defense was exactly what Sarah had predicted. It was too quick, too rehearsed. She was not just defending her niece, she was protecting a narrative. "It sounded like more than just possessiveness," I said, watching her back for any sign of tension. "She made it sound like they had a real history. She said she loved him first." Carol finally turned around, a spatula in her hand. Her expression was one of pity mixed with impatience. "Clara, dear," she said, her voice condescending. "They were children, a childhood crush. It is a sweet, silly little story, nothing more. You are a married woman now. You should not be concerning yourself with such trivial things from the past. You will make yourself sick with worry over nothing." I felt a flash of anger at her tone, at the way she was infantilizing me, dismissing my valid concerns as some sort of newlywed hysteria. "It does not feel trivial to me," I said, my voice firm. "And it certainly did not seem trivial to Liam. There is something you are not telling me, Carol. I am his wife. I deserve to know the truth." Her face hardened. The sweet, motherly facade dropped, revealing something colder and more formidable beneath. "The truth," she said, her voice sharp, "is that you are new to this family. And in this family, we do not go digging up old bones. It is not productive. It is not kind. I suggest you take your husband's advice and let this go. For everyone's sake." The threat was veiled, but it was there. For everyone's sake. She was not just protecting Isabelle or Liam. She was protecting the entire family unit from something. Her fierce, almost frantic defense told me everything I needed to know. This was not a small secret. This was something big, something foundational, something the entire family had conspired to bury. And I was now standing at the edge of the gravesite, shovel in hand. I left the kitchen, my mind racing. Carol had not told me the secret, but she had confirmed its existence, and she had shown me just how far she was willing to go to keep it buried. The dinner was an exercise in tension. Isabelle was there, looking smug and triumphant. She kept trying to catch my eye, a malicious little smile playing on her lips. Liam was a statue, stiff and silent, only speaking when directly addressed. I tried to act normal, to make small talk, but the air was thick with unspoken things. After dinner, while Carol was clearing the table, I cornered Liam in the hallway. "Your mother is in on it," I said in a low voice. "She is helping you hide it. I asked her about the toast, and she practically threatened me to drop it." Liam's face went tight with anger. "Why would you do that?" he hissed. "Why would you go behind my back and start interrogating my mother? I told you to let it go." "Because you will not talk to me." I shot back, my voice rising. You have left me with no choice. I am your wife, Liam. I am supposed to be your priority. But you are prioritizing this secret and your mother and Isabelle over me. What am I supposed to do? Just sit quietly and pretend that our marriage is not built on a lie? It is not a lie, he insisted, his voice strained. It is an omission. There is a difference. Not to me, there is not, I said, my heart aching. What was it, Liam? What happened between you and Isabelle? Were you in love with her? Did you have a relationship? Just tell me. I can handle it. What I cannot handle is the secrecy. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something that looked like despair. It is not that simple, he whispered. It is not about me and her. Not in the way you think. Then what is it about? I pleaded. Help me understand. He shook his head, the shuttered look returning to his eyes. I cannot, he said. I cannot talk about it. Please, Clara, for the love of God, just drop it. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway once again. His words replayed in my mind. It is not about me and her. Not in the way you think. That was a crack. A tiny hairline fracture in the wall he had built around the secret. It was not a simple story of unrequited love or a past romance. It was something else. Something more complex. And his desperation for me to stop digging only fueled my determination to find out what it was. I knew then that I had to go around the family. They were a united front, a fortress of secrets. I needed to find a weak link, someone outside the immediate circle who might know something. I started thinking about Liam's childhood, about the stories he had told me. He often mentioned spending summers at his grandparents' lake house. He always spoke of those times with a strange mixture of fondness and sadness. And he always mentioned that Isabelle was there. The lake house. It felt important. I decided my next step was to find physical evidence. Memories could be twisted, stories could be changed, but a photograph, a letter, an old journal, those things held a more tangible truth. I remembered Liam mentioning that his parents kept boxes of old photo albums and memorabilia in their attic. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot I had. I needed to get into that attic, and I needed to do it without anyone knowing. I concocted a plan. A few days later, I called Carol and told her I wanted to make a surprise scrapbook for Liam, a collection of photos from his childhood up to our wedding. I said I wanted it to be a gesture of goodwill, a way to move past the awkwardness of the wedding toast and show that I was committed to being part of the family. It was a risk. She could see right through it. But the appeal to sentimentality and family unity was my best bet. To my surprise, she agreed. Her voice on the phone was warm again, relieved. Oh, Clara, that is a wonderful idea, she said. What a thoughtful, lovely thing to do. Of course, you can come over and look through the old albums. Liam will be so touched. She told me she would be out for most of the next afternoon at a charity luncheon, but that the house would be unlocked and I could let myself in. It was perfect. I would have the house to myself. The next day, I let myself into my in-laws' quiet, empty house. It felt strange to be there alone, like a trespasser. I went straight for the attic stairs. The air upstairs was thick with the smell of dust and old paper. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled in Carol's neat handwriting. Liam, school years, family vacations, holidays. I started with the boxes labeled with summer dates, looking for anything related to the lake house. I pulled out album after album. There were countless photos of Liam and Isabelle as young children, splashing in the lake, building sandcastles, roasting marshmallows. They looked happy, carefree. But as I moved into the albums from their teenage years, the tone shifted. The photos became less frequent, the smiles more forced. And then I noticed something strange. There were empty squares on the pages, places where photos had clearly been removed. The little adhesive corners were still there, but the pictures were gone. and most of the empty spots were in group shots that included both Liam and Isabelle. Someone had curated these memories. Someone had gone through and deliberately removed evidence of something. My heart started to beat faster. I was getting closer. I kept digging, my hands covered in dust. Tucked away in the back of an album labeled Summer 2009, I found it. A loose photograph that must have been missed in the purge. It was a picture of Liam, looking about 16 or 17. He had his arm around a girl, but the girl was not Isabelle. She was someone I had never seen before. She had long, dark hair and a bright, happy smile. They were standing on the dock at the lake house, the sun setting behind them. They looked so young, so in love. I flipped the photo over. Scrawled on the back in teenage handwriting were the words, Liam and Jessica, Summer '09, forever. Jessica. The name meant nothing to me. Liam had never mentioned a Jessica. I stared at the photograph, at this ghost from his past. Who was she? And why had every other trace of her been erased from the family history? Isabelle's toast had been about her loving Liam first, but this photo suggested that someone else had been there, someone important. I carefully slipped the photograph into my purse. This was my first real clue. It was not just about Liam and Isabelle. There was a third person in this story, a girl named Jessica. And I had a strong feeling that whatever happened that summer, whatever secret the family was so desperate to protect, it revolved around her. The empty spaces in the photo albums suddenly seemed more sinister. They were not just missing pictures. They were missing a person. And I was going to find out who she was and why she had been made to disappear. Back home, I studied the photograph of Liam and Jessica. They looked so genuinely happy, so carefree. It was a stark contrast to the strained, uncomfortable look Liam often had in photos with Isabelle from that same period. My husband had been in love with this girl. It was obvious. So why had I never heard her name? Why was her existence scrubbed from the family record? My first thought was to confront Liam with the photo, to demand answers. But I knew how that would go. He would shut down, accuse me of snooping, and the wall between us would grow even higher. No, I could not go to him yet. I needed more information. I needed leverage. I needed to understand what had happened to Jessica. I turned to the one place where ghosts from the past often linger: social media. I searched for Jessica combined with the name of the town near the lake house. It was a long shot, a common name, a decade-old memory. But I had to try. I spent hours scrolling through profiles, looking for a face that matched the girl in the photo. Nothing. It was like she had vanished from the face of the earth. I changed my approach. Instead of looking for her, I started looking at Liam's old connections. I went back to his high school friends, people he was still loosely in touch with. I scrolled through their old photos back to 2009, 2010, and there, in a tagged photo from a high school party, I found him. Mark. He had been a groomsman at our wedding, a quiet, friendly guy I had not spoken to much. In the old photo, he was standing next to Liam, and a few people over, smiling, was Jessica. Her name was tagged in the photo, Jessica Riley. My fingers trembled as I clicked on her profile. It was private. Of course it was. But there was one crucial piece of information visible, her short list of public friends, and on that list was Mark. They were still connected. My mind started racing. Mark had been at the wedding. He had seen Isabelle's toast. He had seen Liam's reaction. He was friends with Liam, but he was also still connected to Jessica. He was a bridge between the past and the present. He might be the weak link I was looking for. Getting in touch with him would be tricky. I could not just call him up and ask him about his best friend's secret ex-girlfriend. I needed a plausible reason. The scrapbook I had lied to Carol about suddenly became the perfect cover story. I waited a day, composing my message carefully, making it sound as casual and innocent as possible. "Hey, Mark," I wrote. "Hope you are doing well. This is a bit random, but I am putting together a surprise scrapbook for Liam with old photos. I was at his parents' house and found a bunch, but I noticed there are not many from that lake house summer in '09. I found one cute picture of him with a girl named Jessica Riley, and I was wondering if you had any other group shots from that time you could send me? Trying to piece together his whole history. Thanks so much, Clara. I hit send, my heart pounding. It was a gamble. He could ignore it. He could tell Liam. Or just maybe, he would respond. I waited. The hours ticked by. I checked my phone every few minutes, my anxiety growing with each passing moment of silence. Finally, that evening, a notification popped up. A message from Mark. "Hey, Clara," it read. "That is a nice idea. Yeah, I remember that summer. It was a weird one. I might have some old photos in a box somewhere. I can look. But listen, are you and Liam okay?" That toast Isabelle gave was pretty intense. His message was cautious, but it was an opening. He was not just brushing me off. He was asking if we were okay. He knew. He knew something was wrong. This was my chance. I had to be careful, strategic. I could not reveal how much I knew or how desperate I was. "We are fine," I typed back, lying through my teeth. Just the usual newlywed adjustments. To be honest, that toast did shake Liam up more than I expected. He gets so weird whenever that time period comes up. I get the feeling there is more to it than just some teenage drama he does not want to relive. I left it there, a gentle probe, an invitation for him to share more if he was willing. I did not have to wait long this time. His reply came almost immediately. "Yeah, there is more to it. Look, Clara, I probably should not be getting in the middle of this. It is really not my place." My heart sank. He was going to shut me down. I typed quickly, trying to keep the conversation going. "I understand," I wrote. "I am not trying to put you in a bad spot. It is just, I am his wife. I feel like I am walking through a minefield, and I do not even know where the mines are buried. I love him, Mark. I just want to understand what is haunting him. Whatever it is giving Isabelle power over him, and I do not think that is healthy for anyone." I put my phone down, my hands shaking. I had laid my cards on the table. I had appealed to his sense of loyalty, not just to Liam, but to what was right. I had framed it as me wanting to help my husband, not as me trying to dig up dirt. I waited, holding my breath. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mark. I answered on the first ring. "Hello?" "Hey, it is Mark," he said, his voice low. "It is probably better to talk than to text this stuff." "Okay," I said, my throat dry. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him take a deep breath. "Listen," he began. "I am probably going to regret this, but you deserve to know you are not crazy. That summer was bad. Really bad. Liam was head over heels for Jessica. They were the real deal. Everyone thought they would be together forever." "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Isabelle happened," he said, his voice laced with a bitterness that sounded years old. "She was always obsessed with Liam. Not in a normal cousin way. It was unhealthy. She hated Jessica from the moment she met her. She did everything she could to make her life miserable that summer. Spreading rumors, turning people against her, all sorts of nasty, manipulative stuff." "Liam did not defend her?" I asked, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "He tried," Mark said. "At first, but Isabelle had his mom, Carol, wrapped around her finger. They ganged up on him. They made him feel like he was betraying the family by choosing Jessica. It was a constant battle. And then, something else happened. Something that ended it for good." "What was it?" I pressed, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. Mark hesitated. "I do not know all the details," he said slowly. "I was not there for the worst of it. All I know is that it involved something being stolen. A piece of jewelry, I think, from their grandmother, and Isabelle managed to frame Jessica for it. The whole family turned on her. They called her a thief, a liar. It was brutal. Liam, he just folded. He broke up with her. He told her he believed them. It destroyed her. The story hit me with the force of a physical blow, a frame-up, a false accusation. This was not teenage drama. This was a calculated, cruel act of destruction. What happened to Jessica? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. Her family moved away not long after that, Mark said. They had to. Her reputation was ruined in that small town. I have not seen her in years, though we are still connected online. I do not think she ever really got over it. And Liam, I think the guilt has been eating him alive ever since. He made a choice. He chose his family over the girl he loved, even though he knew she was innocent. And Isabelle has been holding it over his head ever since. That is her power. Not that she loved him first, but that he was a coward when it mattered most. The pieces all clicked into place. The paleness on Liam's face. The blackmail text. Carol's fierce defensiveness. Liam's desperate pleas for me to drop it. He was not protecting a secret. He was protecting his shame. The shame of his own weakness, of his failure to stand up for an innocent girl against the tyranny of his own family. Thank you, Mark, I said, my voice hoarse. Thank you for telling me. Be careful, Clara, he said before hanging up. That family, they protect their own, right or wrong. You are messing with something they have kept buried for a long, long time. I hung up the phone, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. I finally had the story. But it was so much uglier than I could have ever imagined. My husband, the good, kind man I thought I had married, had stood by and watched as the girl he loved was falsely accused and destroyed. He had chosen the path of least resistance, the path of cowardice. And he had been living with that choice under Isabelle's thumb ever since. The anger I felt before was nothing compared to the ice-cold fury that now filled me. This was not just about a lie of omission anymore. This was about a fundamental flaw in his character. But I also felt a sliver of something else. Pity. For the 16-year-old boy who had been manipulated and pressured by his family. But that pity was quickly overshadowed by the reality of the present. He was a grown man now. And he had brought that poison, that secret, that weakness into our marriage. I knew what I had to do. Mark's story was a powerful weapon, but it was still secondhand. I needed to talk to the one person who knew the absolute truth. I needed to find Jessica. And I needed her to tell me everything. Finding Jessica was not easy. Her profile was locked down tight. Sending a message through the platform felt too impersonal, too easy to ignore. She had no reason to trust me, a stranger who was now married to the man who had broken her heart and ruined her life. I went back to Mark. I explained that I needed to speak with her, that I believed her, and that I wanted to help make things right, if that was even possible. Mark was hesitant. Clara, I do not know, he said. Bringing this all up again could be really painful for her. She built a whole new life. I know, I said, and I will respect her wishes if she tells me to leave her alone. But this is not just about the past anymore. Isabelle is still using this to control Liam, and that toxicity is now poisoning my marriage. Jessica deserves to know that the monster who hurt her is still pulling the strings. And maybe, just maybe, she deserves a chance to see some justice done. Please, Mark, just ask her. Pass along my email address. Tell her I am not looking for a fight. I am looking for the truth. He finally agreed. The next 24 hours were agonizing. I checked my email every 5 minutes, my stomach in knots. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I was starting to understand the constant low-grade anxiety Liam must have been living with for years, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Always waiting for Isabelle to make her next move. It was no way to live. Then it came. An email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line was simply, Mark gave me your contact info. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The email was short and to the point. I do not know what you want from me. It read. That part of my life is over. I have no interest in revisiting it. Please do not contact me again, Jessica Riley. It was a clear rejection. My heart sank. I had failed. I had pushed too hard and scared her off. I sat there for a long time, staring at the words on the screen. I could respect her wishes and let it go. That was the decent thing to do, but something inside me refused to give up. Isabelle and Carol and Liam had counted on her silence for over a decade. Her silence was the foundation of their dysfunctional peace. I could not let them win so easily. I decided to write back one more time. I knew it was a risk. I poured all the sincerity I could into my words. Jessica, I wrote, I understand completely why you would want nothing to do with this, or with me. I am so incredibly sorry for what you went through. No one should ever have to experience that. I am not writing to ask you to forgive Liam or to dredge up your pain for my own sake. I am writing because the person who did this to you, Isabelle, is still doing it. She used your story to threaten my husband at our wedding. She is holding it over him, poisoning our marriage and continuing to get away with her cruelty. You are the only one who knows the complete truth. They have silenced you for years. If you are willing to speak to me, I promise I will listen. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that the truth finally comes out, in whatever way you feel is right. You deserve to have your story heard. You deserve justice. If you change your mind, I am here. If not, I will never bother you again. Sincerely, Clara. I sent it, feeling like I had just thrown a message in a bottle into the ocean. There was nothing more I could do. The choice was hers. I tried to go about my day, but a heavy sense of dread hung over me. Liam and I were barely speaking. He was trying to act like everything was normal, which only made it worse. He would ask about my day, and I would give one-word answers. The chasm between us was growing wider with every passing hour. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a new email. My breath caught in my throat. It was from Jessica. Okay, the email said. We can talk, but on my terms. A phone call, tomorrow at noon. And Clara, I will know if you're lying. A wave of relief so intense it made me dizzy washed over me. She was going to talk to me. The next day, at precisely noon, I sat in my car in an empty parking lot, my heart pounding, and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice was cautious, wary. It was softer than I had imagined. Jessica? It is Clara, I said. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. I am not doing this for you, she said, her voice firm. And I am definitely not doing it for Liam. I am doing it because you mentioned Isabelle. And the thought of her still getting away with what she did, it makes me sick. I understand, I said. Can you tell me what happened? From the beginning? And she did. For the next hour, Jessica told me the story of that summer. She spoke with a calm, detached voice at first, as if she were recounting a story that had happened to someone else. She told me about meeting Liam, about falling in love, about how perfect everything felt. And then she told me about Isabelle. Her voice changed when she spoke Isabelle's name. It became tight, laced with a pain that was still raw, even after all these years. She described Isabelle's campaign of terror in chilling detail. The whispers, the lies, the way Isabelle would turn Liam's family against her with a well-placed, poisonous comment. She made me feel like I was crazy, Jessica said. She would do something awful. And then when I reacted, everyone would look at me like I was the unstable one. She was a master of manipulation. Then she got to the end of the summer. Her voice started to shake. She told me about Liam's grandmother's locket. It was a family heirloom, very valuable. It went missing from the grandmother's jewelry box. The family was in a panic. And then Isabelle found it. She found it in the bottom of Jessica's beach bag. I had never even seen it before, Jessica said, her voice cracking. I have no idea how it got there. But Isabelle held it up for everyone to see, with this look of fake sadness on her face, and said she had seen me admiring it earlier in the week. It was a lie. A complete, total lie. The family, led by Carol, descended on her. They called her a thief, a liar, trailer trash who was trying to steal her way into their family. They demanded that Liam break up with her immediately. And what did Liam do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Nothing, she whispered, and the single word was filled with a decade of pain. He just stood there. He looked at me and he looked at his mother and his cousin, and he did nothing. I begged him. I told him he knew me. He knew I would never do something like that. I begged him to stand up for me. But he would not even look me in the eye. He just said, I think you should go. And that was it. He chose them. He let them destroy me. Tears were streaming down my face as I listened. The cruelty of it, the injustice, it was breathtaking. I am so sorry, Jessica, I said, my voice thick. That is unforgivable. Yes, she said, her voice gaining a hard edge. It is. My parents pulled me out of there the next day. We moved a few months later. I had to start over completely. But you never really escape something like that. It leaves a scar. We were silent for a moment. I could hear her take a shaky breath on the other end of the line. So what now, Clara? She asked. You have the truth. What are you going to do with it? Her question hung in the air. What was I going to do? The knowledge I now possessed felt heavy, dangerous. It had the power to destroy a family. It had the power to destroy my marriage. But it also had the power to bring justice to an innocent woman who had been wronged in the most horrific way. I am going to make them answer for what they did, I said, a cold, hard resolve settling over me. All of them, Liam, Isabelle, and Carol, they are not going to hide in the dark with this secret anymore. I am going to turn on the lights. How? She asked, a flicker of something that sounded like hope in her voice. I am not sure yet, I admitted. But I will find a way. And I will not let them silence you again. Just be careful, she said, her voice softening slightly. They are vicious when they feel cornered. I learned that the hard way. We talked for a little longer. I asked her if she would be willing, if it came to it, to tell her story to them directly. She said she would think about it. For the first time in over 10 years, someone believed her. And that, she said, was a start. I hung up the phone, my mind a whirlwind of rage and strategy. The time for quiet investigation was over. The time for confrontation had arrived. I had the truth. I had the witness. I had everything I needed. I drove home, a plan forming in my mind. There was another family dinner scheduled for that Sunday. It was supposed to be a casual barbecue. But I was going to turn it into a reckoning. The days leading up to the Sunday barbecue were the quietest, most tense days of my life. Liam and I moved around each other like strangers. He knew something was wrong. My politeness was too brittle, my smiles too sharp. He kept asking me what was wrong, and I would just shake my head and say I was tired. I was not ready to confront him alone. This needed to be done in front of the people who had helped create the secret. The people who had enabled the lie for over a decade. Carol and Isabelle needed to be there to face the consequences of their actions. I spent those days preparing. I went over the details of Jessica's story in my mind until I knew them by heart. I thought about every possible denial, every accusation they might throw at me. They would call me a liar. They would say Jessica was a bitter ex-girlfriend trying to cause trouble. They would try to turn it around on me, paint me as the hysterical, jealous new wife. I had to be ready. My greatest weapon was the truth. But I knew that with a family like this, the truth was not always enough. They had buried it once before. They would try to do it again. I needed something more. I needed an undeniable piece of leverage. I called Jessica one more time. I have a plan, I told her, but I need your help. It is a big ask, and you have every right to say no. What is it? she asked, her voice cautious. I am going to confront them on Sunday, I said, all of them together. I am going to tell them that I know the truth about what happened to you. They will deny it. They will try to discredit me and you. What I need is for you to be ready. I need you to be willing to do something if they refuse to admit the truth. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to be willing to seek legal counsel, I said, my voice steady. For defamation of character. What they did to you, accusing you of theft, ruining your reputation, that is not just cruel, it is actionable. I am not saying we will actually do it, but the threat of it, the threat of a public lawsuit that would drag their precious family name through the mud, that might be the only thing that can force them to tell the truth. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I held my breath. I was asking her to turn her private pain into a public weapon. It was a terrible thing to ask. A lawyer, she said finally, her voice sounding distant. I never thought of that. My parents wanted to, but we were so scared. We just wanted to get away. You are not a scared teenager anymore, Jessica, I said softly. And you are not alone this time. I could hear her take a deep breath. Okay, she said, her voice firm, resolute. Okay, Clara, I will do it. If they lie, you tell them I have already spoken to a lawyer. You tell them I am ready to file a suit. Let's see how they like having their secrets exposed to the entire world. A fierce sense of gratitude and admiration washed over me. This woman, who had every reason to be broken and bitter, was choosing to be brave. She was choosing to fight back. Thank you, Jessica, I said. You have no idea what this means. Just make them pay, Clara, she said. Make them all pay. On Sunday, I dressed carefully. I chose a simple, understated dress. I wanted to look calm, serious, unassailable. Liam watched me get ready, a confused and worried expression on his face. You have been so quiet all week, he said, trying to bridge the gap between us. Are you sure you're okay? I am fine, I said, my voice cool. Just thinking. About what? He asked. I looked at him in the mirror. I saw the man I loved, the man I had married. But I also saw the 16-year-old boy who had made a terrible choice, and the grown man who had been hiding from it ever since. About truth, I said, and consequences. The barbecue at his parents' house was just as I had expected. The forced cheerfulness, the small talk about weather and work, all while a massive unspoken tension simmered just beneath the surface. Carol was overly attentive to me, asking if I needed a drink, if I was comfortable. Her eyes constantly scanning my face for any sign of trouble. Isabelle was in her element, holding court, laughing a little too loudly, shooting me triumphant little smirks from across the lawn. Liam stuck close to my side, a nervous energy radiating off him. I waited until everyone was settled in the living room after the meal, plates of dessert and cups of coffee in hand. This was it. The time had come. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my hands were steady. I stood up. I am sorry to interrupt everyone, I began, my voice clear and calm. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. But there is something we need to talk about. Something that was brought up at our wedding and has been left unresolved. I saw Liam's eyes widen in panic. He started to stand up to stop me. Clara, do not, he said, his voice a desperate whisper. I ignored him. I looked directly at Isabelle. Isabelle, I said, at our wedding, you made a toast? You said you loved Liam first. It seemed like you were hinting at a big secret between the two of you. Isabelle leaned back in her chair, a smug look on her face. She was enjoying this. Was I? She said, feigning innocence. I do not know what you mean. It was just a silly toast. No, it was not, I said, my voice unwavering. It was a threat, and I know what the threat was about. But I think you have the story wrong. It is not about you loving Liam. It is about what you and this family did to Jessica Riley. The name dropped into the silent room like a stone. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Liam froze, his face losing all color, becoming a waxy, pale mask of horror. Carol let out a small, strangled gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. And Isabelle, for the first time since I had met her, the smug, confident smirk vanished from her face. It was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock, quickly followed by rage. I do not know who you are talking about, Isabelle spat, her voice sharp and venomous. You are crazy. You are making things up. Am I? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I had the truth on my side. Am I making up the story of a 16-year-old girl who fell in love with Liam during the summer of 2009 at the lake house? Am I making up the fact that you were so pathologically jealous of her that you spent the entire summer trying to destroy her? This is ridiculous, Carol interjected, finding her voice. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. Clara, I will not have you come into my home and tell these wild, vicious lies about my family. Jessica was a troubled girl, a thief. She was no good for Liam. A thief? I repeated, turning my gaze to her. That is the story you all agreed on, is not it? The troubled girl who stole your mother's locket? The one that you, Isabelle, just so happened to find in the bottom of her bag. How convenient. It is the truth, Isabelle shrieked, her composure completely gone. She was a liar and a thief. Ask Liam. He knows. He is the one who broke up with her because of it. All eyes in the room swiveled to Liam. He was cornered, trapped. He looked from his mother to his cousin, then finally to me. His face was a mess of shame, guilt, and terror. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Yes, Liam, I said, my voice softening slightly, but with an underlying edge of steel. Tell us. Tell me your wife. Is that the truth? Did you believe she was a thief? Or did you stand by and do nothing while your cousin framed an innocent girl because you were too scared to stand up to her and your mother? He stared at me, his eyes pleading. He was begging me to stop, to let it go, to put the monster back in its box. But I could not. It was too late. The box was open. Tell me the truth, Liam, I said again, my voice ringing with authority. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. What really happened to Jessica? The silence that followed was the most profound I have ever experienced. It was thick with the weight of a decade-old lie, with the crushing burden of guilt and shame. Liam stood frozen, the focal point of all our stares. His mother and cousin were looking at him with undisguised panic, their eyes silently screaming at him to hold the line, to maintain the story. I looked at him with a mixture of pity and resolve. This was his moment of reckoning. He could continue to live as a coward, or he could finally, after all these years, choose to be an honest man. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a terrible, soul-deep agony. I could see the war raging inside him, the years of fear and manipulation from his family versus the new life he was supposed to be building with me. She was a good person, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The words, quiet as they were, landed like a thunderclap in the silent room. Carol gasped. Liam, what are you saying? She demanded, her voice shrill with panic. Isabelle's face contorted with fury. Do not you dare, she hissed at him. Do not you dare rewrite history to please your little bride. But Liam was not looking at them anymore. He was only looking at me. She did not do it, he said, his voice gaining a fraction of strength. She would never have stolen anything. I knew it. I knew it then. Then why? I asked, my own voice breaking slightly. Why did you let them do it to her? Why did you abandon her? Tears started to stream down his face. I was scared, he confessed, the words torn from him. I was a kid. I was scared of them, of Mom, of Isabelle. They had me convinced that it was my duty to the family, that Jessica was a threat. They told me if I defended her, I would be turning my back on them forever. I was weak. I was a coward. And I have lived with it every single day since. The confession, raw and painful, hung in the air. Isabelle looked like she had been slapped. Carol stared at her son in horrified disbelief. They had lost control. Their carefully constructed lie had just been shattered by the one person whose silence was essential to maintaining it. Isabelle, however, was not one to give up. She rallied, her face twisting into a sneer. "Oh, boo-hoo," she mocked. "The poor, scared little boy. Do not listen to him. He is just trying to save his pathetic little marriage. Jessica was a tramp and a thief, and she got what she deserved. And you," she said, turning her venomous gaze on me, "have no idea what you are talking about. You are just repeating the lies of a bitter, washed-up ex-girlfriend." "No," I said, my voice cold and hard as ice. "I am repeating the truth. And Jessica is not just some bitter ex. She is a woman whose life you ruined. A woman who has carried the shame of your lies for over 10 years. "Prove it," Isabelle challenged, her eyes glittering with malice. "You have no proof. It is your word, and the word of some girl nobody has seen in a decade, against ours. Who do you think people will believe?" This was the moment. The final move. I took a deep breath. "I think they will believe her," I said calmly. "Especially when she tells her story to a lawyer. You see, I have been speaking with Jessica, and she is tired of being your victim. She is ready to file a lawsuit against you, Isabelle, and against you, Carol, for defamation of character. For knowingly and maliciously spreading lies that destroyed her reputation and caused her and her family immense emotional and financial distress." The color drained from Carol's face. The idea of a lawsuit, of public humiliation, of their perfect family's dirty laundry being aired for the world to see was her worst nightmare. "You would not," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, I would not have to do anything," I replied, my gaze fixed on her. "Jessica would. All I did was tell her the truth, that you are all still hiding behind the same old lies. I told her that she did not have to be silent anymore. The threat of legal action is not coming from me. It is coming from her. And she is not a scared 16-year-old anymore." Isabelle just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. Her power had always been in the secrecy of her crime. She could threaten Liam with exposure because she knew the family would close ranks to protect the secret. But the secret was out. And I had just turned her greatest weapon, the story of Jessica, against her. The idea of depositions, of public records, of having to answer for her actions under oath. It was enough to finally, completely break her. "This is your fault," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Liam. "You were always weak. You let her into your head. You ruined everything." She turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The room was left in a stunned, ringing silence. Carol sank into a chair, looking as though she had aged 20 years in the last 5 minutes. Liam was still standing, tears silently tracking down his face, looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. It was a mixture of devastation and, strangely, relief. The weight he had been carrying for more than a decade had finally been lifted, albeit in the most explosive way possible. I looked at my husband. My heart a confusing mix of anger, pity, and a flicker of something else. Hope. He had finally told the truth. It was a start. A terrible, painful, messy start. But it was a start. The family as we knew it was shattered. But perhaps, from the wreckage, we could build something new. Something honest. The aftermath was as messy and painful as the confrontation itself. The perfect facade of Liam's family had been shattered, and no one knew how to pick up the pieces. Carol did not speak to me for weeks. She alternated between calling Liam to cry, begging him to fix this, and sending him angry texts blaming me for destroying their family. In her mind, the problem was not the original cruel act. The problem was that the secret had been exposed. Isabelle disappeared. She stopped coming to family functions, stopped answering calls. I heard through the grapevine that she had a spectacular falling out with Carol, screaming that Carol had not protected her enough, that she had let me win. The alliance that had enabled her cruelty for so long had crumbled under the first real sign of pressure. Her power, which was rooted in a shared, protected secret, evaporated the moment the secret was brought into the light. Without her leverage over Liam and the protection of his mother, she was just a bitter, isolated woman. But my primary concern was not them. It was Liam. It was our marriage. We were in a fragile, uncertain place. He had confessed, but the betrayal of his long-held secret was a deep wound. We started couples therapy. Our first few sessions were brutal. I laid out all my anger and hurt. I told him how his cowardice had not just harmed Jessica, but had now infected our marriage, making me question his character, his strength, his ability to protect me, to protect us. He did not defend himself. He just listened, his face etched with a shame so profound it was painful to witness. "You are right," he said in one session, his voice thick with unshed tears. "Everything you are saying is right. I failed Jessica. And I failed you. I spent so many years telling myself that it was in the past, that it did not matter. But it always mattered. It was always there, this rotten thing at the core of my life. I was so afraid of it, I could not even look at it. And by not looking at it, I let it poison everything, including us." Slowly, tentatively, we started to rebuild. It was not about forgiveness, not yet. It was about him taking action. He had to do more than just apologize to me. He had to try to make things right with the person he had wronged so deeply. With my encouragement, he wrote a long, detailed letter to Jessica. He did not make excuses. He did not ask for her forgiveness. He just laid out the truth of his own weakness, his fear, and his profound, unending regret for his role in what happened to her. He acknowledged the full scope of the damage they had done, and he took responsibility for his part in it. Then he made a phone call. I sat in the room with him while he did it, holding his hand. It was the hardest conversation I have ever witnessed. He cried. He apologized over and over. He told her that he knew she was innocent, that he had always known, and that he was a coward for not saying so. Jessica, for her part, was reserved. She listened. She did not yell. She did not cry. She just absorbed his words. When he was done, she was quiet for a long time. "Thank you for saying that, Liam," she said finally, her voice devoid of warmth but also devoid of malice. It was simply tired. "It is a lot to take in. I need some time." The final piece was restitution. I told Liam that words were not enough. His family's actions had cost Jessica and her family dearly. They had been forced to move, to start over, their reputations unjustly smeared. Liam agreed without hesitation. He went to his father, a man who had been largely kept in the dark about the specifics of that summer, and told him the entire unvarnished truth. His father was appalled. He was a decent man who had been fed a false narrative by his wife and niece. Together, Liam and his father decided on a course of action. Liam used a significant portion of his own savings, money he had inherited from the very grandmother whose locket was at the center of the lie, and offered it to Jessica. It was not a payoff to keep her quiet. It was a formal, tangible acknowledgement of the harm they had caused. Jessica accepted. She told Liam that the money would help her parents, who had struggled financially after the move. But she made it clear that it did not erase the past. She accepted his apology and the money, but she wanted nothing more to do with him or his family. She was closing the book on that chapter of her life, and she wished to do so for good. The lawsuit was never filed. The threat of it had been enough to force the truth. Its purpose was served. Life settled into a new, more honest normal. Liam and I continued with therapy. We were learning how to communicate. How to build a marriage on a foundation of truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. His relationship with his mother was strained, but he started setting firm boundaries with her for the first time in his life. He told her that he would not participate in the family's culture of secrets and lies anymore. It was a long, slow process, but I saw him changing, growing stronger, becoming the man I had always hoped he was. One evening, about 6 months after the confrontation, Carol came over to our house. It was the first time she had been there since the barbecue. She looked older, more subdued. She apologized to me, a stilted, awkward apology that was more about her own discomfort than any real remorse for her actions. She wanted things to go back to the way they were. "I just hope we can all move on from this," she said, wringing her hands. "For the sake of the family." I looked at her and I felt not anger, but a kind of sad finality. "The family you are talking about, the one built on secrets to protect a cruel person, does not exist anymore," I told her, my voice calm and steady. "Liam and I are building a new one now. And in our family, we do not bury the truth. We face it." She had no response to that. She left soon after, and I knew that while we might be civil, our relationship would never be warm. I had exposed the rot in her family's foundation, and she would never forgive me for it. But I was okay with that. Liam and I are still together. It is not a fairy tale. Some days are hard. The ghost of his past is a scar on our marriage, a reminder of the trust that was broken and the work it takes to rebuild it. But we are building it. Together. Honestly. Sometimes I think back to my wedding day, to Isabelle's smug face as she made that toast. She thought she was so clever, so powerful, holding that old, ugly secret over my husband's head. She thought she was ruining my life. But in the end, her malice was a gift. She handed me the one thread that, when pulled, unraveled their entire tapestry of lies. She thought she was burying me, but she did not realize I was a seed. She just gave me the dirt I needed to grow. They wanted to keep their secrets buried. They finally learned that the truth, no matter how long you keep it in the dark, will always, always find its way to the light.